been sitting here reading an article that Diane sent me with these beautiful images in here. This is a chickadee with its head tucked under its wing.
You can say hi.
That's chickadee?
It's a chickadee with its head tucked under its wing.
Wow. Oh, hello, Shannon.
Oh, Sonia.
I didn't know they can puff up that much.
Yeah, this is an article about how they make it through the winter, especially through the winter nights. And it says a chickadee, well, all the birds, they have all that down underneath their feathers, so they stick their beak because the beak doesn't have any insulation. The beak goes under the wing, and the chickadees could go into kind of a hibernation state. They lower their body temperature and everything, but they also lose, what did it say? 10% of their body weight every night.
Oh my gosh.
Too bad we can't do that.
Yeah, yeah.
10%
10% of their body weight each night. So no wonder they eat so much.
That's why.
Me too.
Especially in the winter for me.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, I was telling the dogs today, I said, here, you can have my Cheez-Its. Better you should eat them than I should eat them. I can sit here and eat cheese crackers all afternoon long if I'm sitting inside. It's better if I go outside. I was talking, Sonia, to a greenhouse manager grower at a public garden in Ohio over the weekend. And he had pictures of his voodoo lilies. So I said, oh, I didn't get my voodoo lily dug out. And he said, if it's a young enough one, he said, they can make it through the winter.
Wow.
He said that as the bulb, the corm gets older, it gets like an indent in the top. Once it gets older and gets the indent in the top, water can sit in there and that rots it. But the younger ones that are more smooth on the top can make it through. So I'm waiting. Actually, it might be thawed underneath there because I've had so much snow stacked up on it. But I'm going to see if I can find it in the spring and see what's left of it. I'm sorry that I didn't bring it up. Somehow thought there would be time. It got cold so fast this year, just boom. Once it got cold, it stayed cold.
And mine are not doing anything at all. Nothing.
Nothing?
Nothing at all. I called the lady where the bulbs were from, and then she said, well, sometimes they take a break and will not flower for a year. But my bulbs are 4 different ones, and the bulbs are so different in size, like 2 are only the size of a pink cherry, the one a tangerine, the other one is a little bigger, and none of them shows any shoots, nothing.
You know, they might not have had, she's right, they might not have had a good enough year to get enough bulk to bloom. I've seen that happen with dahlias and lilies too, where if they have a year of not so good growing, then they just don't get big enough. I wouldn't worry about it as long as they stay firm. They're alive anyway. And
yeah, I asked her if I should water them. She said no, then they will rot.
Yeah, the man that I was talking to, Joe Mihalki, said that he's got a voodoo lily and it's got another kind, Amorphophallus, the one that they call the stinking. They usually bloom once and then they die, and they make a big deal out of it when the greenhouse has one or conservatory has one, and everybody comes to see the flower because they smell so bad. And it's the same thing. They're related to the voodoo lilies, so they bloom just a stalk in the summertime. And he's got one of those. And he said he came in one day to his house and he thought, oh my gosh, and he cleaned out the refrigerator. And I said, no, I still smell it. So he cleaned under the refrigerator. Then he went out and did something else, and he came home and he could still, it didn't occur to him to go downstairs and look and see that his Amorphophallus, the carrion flower, was blooming. And he said, I just cut the flower off and got rid of it so that it didn't, and it doesn't hurt the plant to do that. So if they can go without flowering, if they can lose their flower and still be okay, they can go without flowering and still be okay too.
Yeah, I covered mine up with the plastic.
Uh-huh.
When it was blooming. I just used one of my tripods to put the camera on, put it on real high and put the plastic over it, and that worked fine.
I'll have to remember that when mine gets big enough. Yeah.
It was Dave.
Oh, hi, Dave. Yeah, so
I'm a volunteer down at Udolph Garden in Detroit. Not a lot of activity there this time of year. So anyway, I just posted some information on three 1 hour virtual public lectures, February, March, and April, that look at some of the behind the scenes issues for the Udolph Garden there on Belle Isle. So the first one is this Monday, and then one in March 10th and one on April 7th. But it could be a way to sit at home in the warmth of uh, your living room or whatever, and see some of the background in that amazing installation.
It is an
So,
amazing garden, and Steve and I had a thought about that. We're going to want to repost this a little bit later when more people are here because people see chat from when they get here. So we're
okay,
going to copy that and repost that, and make sure that people can see that. But the Udolph Garden really it's a very special place, Steve and I were having a discussion the other day about how many people don't know that the Udolph Garden is there, have never been there, despite the fact that they live in the area and they're gardeners and they would love it if they'd see it. Um, I wonder why it has to be called the Udolph Garden. Couldn't it be called the Belle Isle Perennial Garden or the Fantasy Garden because the people who aren't gardeners don't know who Pete Udolph is. So
well,
yeah,
the people who named it are the ones who recruited Pete Udolph from the Netherlands to come design it.
right.
So that's I think that's the main part of that. And people come from all over North America and some from Europe to see it because it is an Udolph garden. So it's
He is quite the famous garden designer. But the High
but
Line in New York is very popular, but it's not called the High Line Udolph Garden.
good
Or
point.
just
Yes.
yeah. So if there was something else about it to attract people to it, because if you don't know who it is, then it misses the impact, the potential impact. So I'm going to ask them whether there's a way that they can team it up and make it the Udolph Belle Isle Garden or the Udolph Four Season Perennial Garden or something that's the descriptive of it and see if more people will come down there. Belle Isle is such a beautiful place. It's a gorgeous park and so many memories for us. I'm sorry, I should have been advancing the screen here. Steve's got beautiful pictures here that were for questions time. So we'll copy and put that back in. Steve, can you copy it and just keep it on your clipboard?
Yep, I've got it already.
Okay. One of the superhero movies, this Edinburgh train station, which is a very cool place. And Steve took this picture of it when we were there in January one year. It was one of the fight scenes happened in there. Just got today, Diane, if you're here, thank you so much. It's perfect. An article from the New York Times that from the end of January about how birds make it through the winter, because weren't we saying that just last week that just do not even understand how they make it through the winter, all the different mechanisms they have, and beautifully illustrated. I mean, for a magazine, for a newspaper, it's sure different than Once Upon a Time. But Steve, these birds out here lose 10% of their body weight every night, keeping up with enough energy to stay warm. 10%.
10%.
Yeah, so why are they eating so much? They have to make up for that.
Well, those little ones that you can't even feel them if they land on your hand, 10% is a heck of a lot.
Yeah, that's a lot to lose. And I think it was Donna sent this about weed killer. Maybe we should wait and do this one when everybody's here.
Yeah, I think you should.
Okay. But if you've got questions, type them into chat or raise your hand. Let's see, where's those notes? Sorry, Steve, I'm going through your pictures fast. But the raise your hand control, the chat, you can click chat when your bar shows up down here. And then make sure that it says that you're talking to the whole group. Because if you talk just to Steve or me, we're not very good at doing two things at once. We'd have to watch two different boxes and flip back and forth. So talk to the whole group if you've got a question for the group. And if you'd like to talk, which works really well in reactions or in the participants menu when you open the list of who's here, you can click raise your hand and then you'll jump to the top of our alphabetical list and we'll know that somebody wants to talk besides besides us. But-
Like Nancy just did.
all right, good. So go ahead, Nancy.
Hi.
Morning,
So
good evening.
I'm gonna have you start with okay, they're expecting 40 degrees next week. Can we be cutting even if there's snow
Got
on the
it
ground?
covered. Got it covered. Got it covered. Because
Okay, good.
we
good.
sure are. And you know what? I forgot to look at the update and see if they've changed the weather a little bit. Let's see. How do we do this? So that I'm going to start with the screen that says there, and I'll go backwards to, because I won't remember that recipe until then. The time? Got 1 minute.
Yeah, Monday, Sunday, oh boy, they're now calling for rain on Tuesday,
Yeah, but that's Tuesday.
but that's after pruning, yes.
Yeah. We'll take another look at it when we get to that. I think it's one of the first things up on the ready list, and there's some pruning examples in there. You go ahead and start us off, Steve.
Okay, good evening and welcome to Free for All Friday. This is our 32nd edition of this
This romp,
type of meeting. We're coming to you from gardenatozz.org.
and
I'm
everybody
Stephen
is
Nicola.
welcome. Whoops, sorry,
Oh.
Steve. Everybody
I'm
is
Stephen
welcome.
Nicola.
Okay.
That's going to get edited out.
Yeah, tell your friends to join us. Anybody can come. Celebrate growing, cultivate problem solving. I'm Janet, and we've been married a long time, and usually we can figure out who's going to talk first. Usually. Oh, what? We're going to go backwards though for here because we asked people to send us questions, and we got a question here just before we got started that I added in. I've read about the weed killer with a gallon of vinegar and 1.5 cups of salt and 2 tablespoons of Dawn. And is this considered non-toxic? Does it leach beyond the space? Could you use it for brick paver area? And there is the old phrase, salt the field so the defeated could not raise crops. That's true. That they invading armies would ruin fields so that people couldn't raise crops. They'd also poison wells with toxic plants and dead animals thrown down wells. But about this weed killer, these homemade recipes can be effective in what they're trying to do, but they have the cachet of sounding like, because they're homemade, they must be better or safer than buying something made for this. The ingredients in this weed killer are toxic. I mean, it's a weed killer, and this is an indiscriminate weed killer. In other words, that vinegar is going to dissolve the cuticle on a leaf and cause the leaf to burn. It would be similar if when you put vinegar on plants to kill them. The acidity kills them by burning the leaf. It's like you plucked the leaf off. It's not like you killed the root of the plant, unless it's a really tiny plant. Losing its leaves won't kill it, but it does burn it down and get it out of sight in a couple of days. But it doesn't know the difference between a good plant and a bad plant. So you have to direct the spray. Because it's liquid, it does get between cracks of things, and that can help kill where you're working between brick pavers, so that could work. Salt, we tell people stay the heck away from putting salt on soil. Salt, sodium, the salt that you would have in your kitchen to use, or sea salt for that matter. I'll set that one aside and come back to it in a minute. Salt that has sodium in it reacts with the particles of soil in the ground and breaks apart the bonds that are making the soil crumble and be airy and loose. They break apart the bonds and the soil becomes denser and settles down, and water doesn't go through it very well and air doesn't go through it very well. And it's very difficult to get the salt out of the soil. The only way to get it out of the soil is to leach it down, further down into the soil. So if you're using something like that, it better be on a place where not only are you not growing anything, brick pavers maybe, but where there are no roots of plants, desirable plants under the patio. You know, if you're under a tree or something, then the salt is going to be affecting the tree and the permeability of the soil. Sometimes you'll get more moss after you get too much salt in the soil. 2 tablespoons of Dawn. Soap is well, dishpan hands. I just got done doing the dishes and they're all dried out and crackly. Soap breaks the exoskeleton of insects, and because their shell is their skeleton, is the only support they have. Once that cracks, they are immobilized and they die. So it can work on insects. I'm not sure why would you, well, I guess you would use it as a weed killer because the soap is a surfactant. It makes water wetter. It makes water permeate things better. But it would not be considered non-toxic. Would it leach beyond the space where it's sprayed? Depending on the type of soil that you have, yes. Clay soils, water goes into the soil and then it goes down so slowly that it spreads out in a wide pattern. In sandy soils, it goes straighter down and doesn't spread out as far. But yes, it can leach. But you could use it. I don't see why people don't just buy one of the ones that's made for that. The Safer's herbicide, I think it's Safer's, certainly a bunch of them are based on potassium salts rather than sodium salts. And that's a little bit easier on the soil to be using a potassium salt, just like the pet-friendly salt de-icers to use for walkways.
Yep.
The one that we have right now is a mix of sodium and magnesium, because any salt can work to make water or ice saltier and lower its freezing level so the water will run off. So even fertilizer works as a salt. My sister found that out. She had some fertilizer left over and she didn't mind the blue dye that was in it. So she used it, but if it's a salt-based fertilizer, it can work as a de-icer too. It's a long diversion. That's the prettiest drive in the world. Was it Teddy Roosevelt called it that, Steve?
Yes, it's
Yeah.
along the Mississippi River in Illinois.
Yep, along Mississippi.
I would argue, but that's all right. We're all allowed our opinions.
Forgotten the name of the street.
It wouldn't be an argument, it'd be a discussion about beautiful views.
Yep. Okay, onward. So that's Steve and me on a nicer day. And we're working on the website this week. There's so much. When you've got thousands of things up there because of all the writing that we've been putting there for years, to stash away what we've already done and move on to new things, that every time I find something, I go, oh my gosh, I have 1,500 pages I have to change. Sometimes I want to run the other way, but it is good to have that there. I pull things from there all the time to send to people or to use for our webinars. Free for All Fridays, tell your friends, and they can get an invitation from us if they want to be on our list. We'll send it to them, but they don't have to be on our list. They can always just go to the Fridays page, just click Fridays from the home page, gardenatoz.org, and the link is always there that you can click and join us at the meeting. Even if you want to join just for a couple of minutes to ask a question, go for it. Tell them to do that. Most of them. Yes.
We're getting another, what was the name of the de-icer we used? And could you repeat the ingredients in case we can't find our brand? We have used any of the plant, as long as it says plant friendly, not pet friendly.
And it'll also say that it's easier on gardens. I don't read the brand name. Steve had trouble finding de-icer when we ran out this week. I don't read the label, the brand name. I read the ingredients label. I'm looking for it to be based not entirely on sodium chloride, but on magnesium chlorate or on potassium chloride. So I'm looking at the ingredients level, and there are a number of them. Most of them do tout on their label someplace that they're pet friendly or safer for gardens. Some of them will say they're safer for concrete because sodium has a terrible effect on concrete too. But you're looking for magnesium or potassium in the ingredients list. So the one that we just got is in a bag, and it's very heavy.
Yeah, it was a 40-pound bag, which normally you get them in a little gallon jug, maybe the little small white pellets.
I didn't even read the name though.
No, neither did I. I took a picture of it, but
I wanted to say that most of these are pictures that we put up just for filling the screen when we don't have a ready picture when you ask a question, because people ask a question that we're not able to grab a picture for right away. We like to have something pretty up there. Almost all of the pictures tonight are from you. Things that people send us have sent us over the years, either asking a question about it or just sharing with us, which is wonderful. I mean, it's just beautiful. This is Ace Johnson sent this. It is a fern leaf peony. You can see it's blooming early in the year. The hostas are just coming up. That is such a beautiful plant, fern leaf peony.
They are.
It's an ephemeral. After it's done blooming, by about the time that the other bigger peonies bloom, it's going to be dying back and go dormant for the year. You have to mark the place where it is. I didn't have any luck with them in our last garden. I think the soil was too lean, but I might try one here.
Nancy is asking, is calcium chloride okay?
Yeah, calcium chloride is better too. It's not quite as good as using the magnesium or the potassium, but that works better than sodium. There's probably sodium in it, but you're trying to get less in it. Let me see. I thought I had. Oh yes, it was here. So let's see. Well, first Nancy asked about a pruning window, so let's go there first. Pruning window opening soon, and Mother Nature does not change things around because, oh, that day I have to take the kids to soccer, or that day I was planning on fixing the kitchen sink, or whatever it is. The pruning window that's coming up is, as far as I could tell, and I haven't checked the weather right now. I checked earlier today. Pruning window, it's a thaw if. So this came from going to What's Up, and by department, we'll show you how to do that. Rather than just going to the archived ones and looking by season, as we've been telling you, you can just go to What's Up and you can click on This Week in Our Garden, which is the articles that are going to say what Steve and I have been doing in our own garden. And a whole list of the articles that are in there under that category will come up. And the thought to prune now is what we're looking at right here. And it is what is going on right now. It's a thaw if for 3 or more days the daytime temperatures are above freezing and the nights stay above 31. And if it's dry, it's perfect. Well, we've got Monday coming up where there's a chance of rain, but not for sure. Monday is 40, overnight it's 34, the next day it's 40, then it's down to 29. So if I prune on Monday morning, I will have the 24 to 36 hours that these pieces of wood we leave exposed have to change their moisture level so that they don't freeze and the cell walls break. So Monday morning, I will be out to prune a young red maple. And I'll show you some pictures of it. I hope I show you some pictures of it. I'm pretty sure I put them in here.
I think so.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Steve, you checked for me. It's a lot easier to cut things when they're dormant. And some of them, like maples, birches, beeches, have a lot of sap rising fairly early. And if you cut them, the sap oozes out the cuts. It doesn't hurt the plant to do this. And there are some pollinators that can benefit by drinking the sap that's coming out. But it looks bad and people don't like to see that happen. So you try to prune maples, birches, and beeches before the sap rises. But the sap's probably risen already, so I'm going to see probably oozing coming from those branches and need to tell April, whose tree it is, that what's going on. So I have already texted her and said, I will be there Monday morning. Even if you're not there, I'm going to prune that tree because we've had nothing but wet thaws this winter. And those wet thaws are not good for pruning. You don't want to prune wet wood. This young maple, in 2023, at the beginning of the year, I pruned the roots severely on this tree. I think we showed it to those of you who've been with us coming back and forth for a while back, but it was dying back. The leader had died and it was obvious that it had girdling roots. It was planted at the same time and from the same stock as a red maple that the neighbor planted across the street. That tree was also doing poorly. So in 2023, I showed April, whose tree it is, how to pull the soil away. We cut out a number of girdling roots and gave the tree a chance to get started. Restarted. Here's the leader that was dying back, and its growth was all coming from low down, a call for help, and from lower branches. This part died back, and so this girdling root was girdling for a couple of years. So it looked like this, and this is in February of 2024. In February of 2024, we pruned it in order to take out the leader that had died. This part here is gone, and to reduce the height of the side branches, which are trying to become leaders. They're competing with the leader that started to develop here. And you want one top so that the tree will grow up. That's why pyramidal trees can be so pyramidal, is that they have one top growing up, and we want this tree to grow up, not out like a bush. So when we got done, it's got a new leader coming here, which might make you think, well, but it's all crooked. A, it's going to straighten itself up. B, when that trunk is 6 inches and 8 inches across, you're not going to notice the little bit of bend in it. And at least you're not going to lose the tree. So after a year of growing, so pruned it in February, and I said, let it have all the foliage that it can have. Let it feed the new roots that it's growing. So here's what it looked like at the end of the year. And you can see how those pieces on the side shot up. And here's the leader that we want to have. So I'm going to go and prune that. I'll take the suckers off. I'm going to take these big branches right off at the trunk now, because now we have a good leader growing and a vigorous middle, and that's what we want to have take off from there. So yes, we have a pruning window coming up, and let's try to get the ones first that maybe we can get before the sap rises too quickly in them. Questions about any of that?
Not so far.
There's also the pruning that this is a Coosa dogwood, a multi-stemmed Coosa dogwood, probably made multi-stem by when it was little. Somebody kept cutting it back so it would sprout out low. Everybody seems to think multi-stem is great, but these stems can give each other a lot of trouble. There's one growing right across the middle here. It's wasted wood growing in the shade of other branches, and it's also going to get bigger around. So is this going to get bigger around? So is the one on the other side get bigger around, and they're going to squeeze each other out just like girdling roots. So here's a Stewardia tree. It's another beautiful summer blooming tree with a flower like a camellia. This one's name is Stewardia pseudo-camellia. But it also was probably made by cutting it back repeatedly, and it's got a lot of trunks that are real close to each other, already crossing each other. This one goes from here out into the middle, crosses everybody else. There's no room for those to develop in there. We need to get some of those out of there. The bark is beautiful on Stewardias. This is a different species of Stewardia, but you can see this one's beginning to do it here with more in the browns and tan and olive tones. So here is before pruning to take out trunks. Here is after pruning with the extra trunks gone. Took 3 trunks out of there in order to give the plant room to grow. We need to go back and see how big that is. I understood, Steve, last time you drove by that they'd limbed it up. So it was, you could walk in. Yeah. So there's what we took out. It's not easy to take those trunks out this late in the game. It's better to do it when the plant is little, because it takes a lot of very tight movement, sawing, and even a little Dremel tool, kind of grinding it out of the way. And that's all written up in What's Coming Up 28, which we found by going to What's Up from the homepage. And once you're at What's Up, you go to the bottom of the menu, and this menu might be way at the bottom of the page. To go to the bottom of the menu to Ensemble Editions and click Late Winter, and all of these will open up. Every one of these is a magazine with multiple articles. This one has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 articles in it. And you can read about that there and look at the pictures. You don't have to come back to the video. Diane sent this picture of her dog lounging on the soft bed of several bushels full of maple seeds that came off. And you see they're green. This is the fruit drop time. These are not ripe. These are the excess ones that didn't get pollinated well enough, and so the tree sheds. You also get fruit drop from apples and crab apples and peaches. That just the excess fruit falls off. Well, that's what you got there. That's just the excess. So you're going to see more come down later.
Teresa's asking, would we repeat the requirements for thaw pruning? 36 hours, day temps above, night temps, question mark, thanks. And then her concern is that you said it might rain on Monday. I don't think we said it would rain on Monday, but I
I
don't
did. I
remember that.
said when I looked earlier today, there was a chance of rain on Monday.
Okay.
Pruning, let me see, we wrote them down once before, but I don't think I wrote them out this time. You want to have 36 to 48 hours of above freezing temperature after you get done pruning. You want to have dry weather while you are pruning. So you're looking for 2 days and a night, or 2 days and 2 nights, or 3 days if you can get them, like we have coming up on Monday. On Monday, it will be 40 degrees during the day, they say, and down to 34 at night. And it'll be 40 degrees during the day on Tuesday and possible rain, and then down to 29 at night. And that's that. If I prune on Monday in the morning, I've got my 36 hours by the time it dips below freezing on Tuesday night. So it's a squeaky window, it's a little opening, but we just haven't had any openings this year. The ones that we have had have been wet, because you don't prune wet wood, even on trees that don't get a lot of diseases of the wood. It's just not a good idea to prune when it's wet.
Yeah.
Plants are not happy with that, not woody plants.
It's been a pretty legitimate winter here in Southeast Michigan since before Christmas.
Yeah. And like I say, most of these
Nothing else.
Diane from Waterville in Ohio sent this one because we had no clear picture of Euphorbia marginata. This is our native annual snow on the mountain. It's not the wicked ground cover Agipodium or bishopsweed or goutweed. This is an annual that seeds itself around, and these leaves are green that you see here until all of a sudden in maybe the second or third week of July, the plant goes white and frosted all across the top. Those aren't the flowers, they're colorful leaves. The flowers are tiny little things that you don't see, but once you have it, it seeds itself around, and you just watch for the seedlings to come up and give them some room. Euphorbia marginata. Thanks, Diane. Okay, let's see. I'm going to go back because we had something else. There you go. Wanted to start with what we were doing this week. Remembering in the wintertime that it's easy to draw designs on the ground. Paths are ways to lead the eye, not just the feet. And snow trails can aid your work and design. So your eye follows the path across the front of our house and over to the patio area. I make paths in the snow. This is the shortcut path to that front path to cut across the corner. And that marks the edge of Steve leaves the grass tall here and shorter over here. So that line is there. And I've been playing with this line for a while because I want it to have a bit of a wiggle, but not enough of a wiggle to make people feel like they're taking extra steps. And I redraw the line a little bit in the wintertime to look at it and see how it works. The neighbors might think you're crazy for going out and shoveling snow on your grass, but it can tell you where a bed would look nice. Whoops. And in my case, because it is going to be a thaw coming up, it means that the snow, which is now very sugary and not good packing, is going to become good packing as the temperature rises. So I've been shoveling the paths in the front yard to accumulate snow in several places where I can make a snow sculpture. I don't know what I'm making this year, though. My granddaughter is over tonight. Maybe she can come up with some ideas. Because I love doing these things. They're fun to do. It makes people look, it makes people smile. We've had people drive by and roll the window down and say, I just love to come and see what you've put out there now. And all it takes is food coloring and a pair of good gloves and snow pants so that you can pack everything and make it into what you want to make it into. Kathy, no, Luann sent this picture. So the tree just fell over in my neighborhood, just fell right over. Yep. Can you see the girdling roots, Steve? You gotta look.
Yep.
It was girdling itself right around here, so the tree could not stand anymore because this part couldn't grow and was dying back, and eventually the top just got too heavy. People will say a car must have jumped over and hit it. Nope, they probably just fell over because they couldn't stay connected anymore.
Yeah. Michelle's asking, have you ever seen the Euphorbia marginata leaves get a light brown spots?
I can't say
And
that I have because for the most part,
Nan-
we just let it come up as a filler between things, and I've never noticed it looking obviously bad. So I can't say that I've ever noticed that.
yeah, Nancy has seen it on hers, and Michelle said once you get them, they come back year after year, even though I try to pick off all the old leaves that fall.
You know, for every plant that we grow, there's at least 2 or 3 organisms that are dependent on that plant, including funguses, bacteria, and that kind of thing. I try not to pay attention to things that are what would you call it? Fleeting. It's an annual plant, so it's only got the 1 year, and it's going to grow faster than it. If it doesn't look good, then maybe you grow it in a different place. Ours is always interspersed between other plants, so we're really only seeing the top of it anyway. But you can also not grow it for a while. You can just weed them all out and deny the pathogen its host plant. If it has nothing to grow on, then it's going to go away for a while. But if you don't give up on something, like our friend Suzanne had aster yellows running around in her yard. And I said, we need to get rid of the black-eyed Susans and the daisies and the asters for a couple of years because they're feeding this pathogen that affects a whole big group of plants. But she couldn't give up her black-eyed Susans and daisies, so the pathogen stayed in the yard.
Yeah, Diane said she really loved that plant, but found out she was allergic to the white sap.
Oh, euphorbia is all, I shouldn't say all, there's hundreds of species of euphorbias, but most of the ones that we grow, they are all phytophototoxic, meaning phyto, plant, photo, light. If you get the sap on you and then stay in the light without washing that off pretty quickly, it burns. I one time I looked like I'd painted my face. I had red streaks across my cheeks and up my nose because I was working with Euphorbia mercenites as a cut flower. And every time I reached into the bucket of water where I'd soaked it and then pushed my glasses up on my nose, I was scraping euphorbia sap, diluted, but still euphorbia sap across my face. And I didn't even see it till the next day when I went outside. So yeah, you do have to watch out for the euphorbia sap. This came from Corky Smith, who might be here today. She is in Hawaii now, a Michigander who went to Montana and then Hawaii. And Friday nights are about the only time she can be here, but she has sent a number of beautiful pictures over the years of just how wonderful the world is and large. And in Hawaii, how many things you can make. She said, this is just from the grounds around our building. I went out and picked a few things.
Pretty nice.
Yep. And looking out over the ocean is an amazing place to see an entire rainbow. See the double rainbow?
Yep.
An entire double rainbow. We asked our niece, who is a NASA engineer, well, maybe I understand Doge was looking at her department. I am very glad that today I used the USDA plants site and it's still there. I'm just so leery of people coming in and terminating projects and people without knowing really what they're doing. At any rate, I talked to our niece, who's an NASA engineer and has flown high level because her work has to do with the ozone layer and the opening of the ozone layer. I said, if I went high enough up, would a rainbow be a circle, like in a puddle of oil when you look down? And she said, yes, you do. When you are far enough up in the sky and there's a rainbow, it's a circle. And I think that's a pretty cool perspective. We promised last week we would tell you about our bird feeders. One of our clients spelled this out to me many times. These bird feeders are for me, she said. These bird feeders need to be where I can see them. You can have all the feeders you want someplace else, but I need to have feeders where I can see them because I want to see the birds. So put your feeders where you can enjoy them. So in our front yard, we have a feeder there. It's up about 10 feet. And it's right above the patio. Steve puts in it the sunflower hearts so that we don't get so many shells. We still get shells on there because the birds and the squirrels carry things around. But we hang it up very high so that Steve can see it in his office window, which is, we're on a bi-level and he's in the upper level. So we hung it up high so that Steve could see it. And we did that by pounding this is a 10-foot black iron pipe. We pounded it 4 feet into the ground. So it's 6 feet at the top of this. This is a pipe base. And then I built the patio around it. We have also taken a patio apart, lifted up part of it, put in a pipe, and then put the patio back around the base. If Steve lifts up that squirrel baffle, there is now the top of the pipe right here. And we've taken the leg of a shepherd's crook type bird feeder support or plant support and put it into the pipe. See, there's the top of the pipe. I didn't even take off that plastic piece. And I think I didn't take the label off. Look, is that a label down there? So the shepherd's crook fits right into there. We could take off this other leg, but it's kind of a stabilizing effect when the top rod starts rocking back and forth. It kind of stops it moving. I used to put a tennis ball on there so that nobody would scrape themselves, but now with a squirrel baffle there, for the most part, people give that a little wider berth. And how do we change it? Because some people said they would like to do this. It would keep the deer from getting into their feeders. I put a T connection at the top of a piece of PVC pipe and screwed a hook into it, just a hook like a coat hook. So when we put the pole up, lift the feeder up, and then bring it down. You can see how the pole bends. It's PVC and it's going to bend it with the weight as I move it out from me, but I set it down on the ground and pick it up, and then we put it back up there like that. And Steve, I forgot to put the picture of you standing there with the pole.
Oh, yeah.
I'm sorry.
That's all right.
Both do this. It does not keep the squirrels away. The squirrels still launch themselves from the roof. It's about 10 feet across to that pole, that top of that pole, but they will launch themselves from the roof and balance on the top of the pole and get down. So Steve, sometimes I'll hear him banging on his office window going, "Get out of there, you." But for the most part, the squirrels hang out at the easier feeders in our yard. In fact, we call them the squirrel feeders because that's the ones that are easiest for them to get to.
Diane is asking what our favorite seed is. And I use Sunflower Hearts medium. I use a Nature's Way Cardinal mix, it's called. It's got black sunflower, striped sunflower, and saffron.
Safflower.
Safflower.
Yeah.
And then I've got Nature's Way,
I think it's Nature's Window, Steve.
Nature's Window, not Nature's Way. Nature's Window Wild Finch mix that's got thistle, sunflower hearts, and something else in it. And also you use suet and now a bluebird mix that's got fruit, mealworms, and sunflower in it. And then just plain old peanuts now because a lot of birds come to peanuts, and we got some squirrel-proof feeders that are actually working.
Yeah.
And then
Made by what company? We'll have to do that.
I can't remember. We'll have to do that.
But his favorite seed,
Anyway.
probably the one that other people don't seem to know about, is that Finch mix. It's a mix of thistle, millet, and are there sunflower? No.
Yeah, there's sunflower in there.
And a little bit the cracked
Yeah.
flower
But
hearts.
what brings the most birds, the most type of birds go to just the plain sunflower heart.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
there's a lot that don't like it that much. So that's why we have a diverse feeding. Oh, and a bunch of mealworms, just straight mealworms that we throw in certain locations, hoping to
There.
see.
These are freeze-dried mealworms. They're not alive anymore.
Anyway,
Insect report.
that's it.
Okay, good. I mean, come on. I've always wanted to see a penguin in a real place, and Corky went to Antarctica and sent us pictures so that people take us around the world with them. Oh, we do have Weekend Walkabout Season 6 just about set up. Sorry that we can't send it out yet, but we're trying to include more people other than the two of us because we want to learn too. And it's such fun to have other gardeners, other horticulturists there. So we're going to start off with lesser known native plants. That's all set up. Pierre Bennerup. Pierre loves talking to you guys. He said, "Oh, I want to do this again." Steve and I are working on Easy on the Environment with things like permeable pavement and other things we can do to be easier on the ecosystem. In June, what makes a five-star garden plant with Richard Hawk, who is the professor that began and still runs the Chicago plant evaluation gardens. He's going to talk to us about what he looks for in a plant and tell us about some of the five-star plants and why we should be growing, we should be throwing things out, we should be assessing our own using some of his criteria. I'm really excited about that. Crowd pleasers in the high summer garden, we're working on someone that we know at a zoo, a horticulturalist at a spectacular zoo garden, but I have not got a date set for sure with that one. Then in August, it's lawn substitutes, or alternative lawns, if you want to call it that, and that's Pierre Bennerup's choice. Then in September, and the date, some of these dates, this one is one of them, might move a little bit. These people are busy giving talks to conferences and also attending professional conferences that they don't want to miss. And there's one coming up in September, but Forgotten Fall Faces. We wanted to talk about the plants that don't get used enough in the fall for color, either of bloom or leaf or form or texture or change. October, we're lined up to do container plantings for fall and winter, not just your normal container plantings, but the things that you want to bring over the winter or decorate for the holidays. And that's Jennifer Brennan. We're working very hard, and it's taking a lot of time to update our information about roots, planting when the roots are wrong. And you can call those compromised roots or grown girdled roots. We are working on interviewing a number of the people who are instrumental in drawing this to everyone's attention, working to try to get it corrected. And we've quoted them in our other talks about roots. So what we're doing is getting with them and saying, where are we now? It's been 20 years. How's it look? Then in December, we're really glad to have Lauren Postal, who is a biologist, teacher, environmental biologist and a teacher.
Yes.
She's going to talk with us about kids in nature. Then in January, we start off with the traveling gardener, David Michner, curator at University of Michigan. He has been to so many places. I said, just make it exotic, David. Take us to China. Show me those places in Siberia that you've told me about. Show me the places in Argentina that you've been collecting plants in the mountains. So we'll do that in January. Then Steve and I will do pruning and shaping plants. We're pretty sure that we'll do that, although we're talking with about using material from longwood. And then we'll wind up the season with planting a tree, what the trees can do for you, where they can best do that for you, and how to plant best with Marvin Petway, who's one of our community already and telling us a whole lot of things. So we'll be sending that out to you shortly, and we hope that you'll be able to come back and support us again with Weekend Walkabout, because this is an exciting way to go. Corky again looking out over the Pacific Ocean. That's Corky. And I'm sorry, I've forgotten her husband's first name. It'll come to me. Okay, so we did the pruning window already. So we'll do Steve and I decided to call it the 45-mile-per-hour garden, the part of our What's Up newsletters that has to do with things that you can see as you're driving around town. You don't even have to walk out into the garden to see them. You're going to see them as you drive around. And people would send us things and we would send things. This is one of the places that you find by going to What's Up. And then when What's Up page opens up, there's ensemble editions that take you to the issues by season, but there are all these departments. Main features, This Week in Our Garden, Green Thumbs Up, Tip Cuttings, Mentors, 45-mile-per-hour garden. So we showed you that you can go in and pick a winter and open up and get the winter issues, but you can also open up. Wow, Janet, where'd you put it? And the issues that you pick will be all listed on a page that tells you what winter is, because winter's not in the same time for one place as it is for another. Winter stays longer in Minnesota and leaves earlier in South Carolina. But in both places, when you start smelling skunks again, you get whiff of skunk, you go, aha, if the skunks are moving around again, it's late winter. But if I click on the 45-mile-per-hour garden, I get the articles that we've posted individually. There's more 45-mile-per-hour garden in our magazine issues, but these are the ones that are posted individually. And you can go here and click on this. This was one of my favorite ones, the 45-mile-per-hour garden here that showed this juniper suddenly turning color. And it's not that it's dying. It's not rust. See, it's still got the leaves are there. It's just got so many cones. And these are the male cones on the juniper. The female cones develop later. But when you look at something like that, you know that it's going to be releasing an incredible amount of pollen. And if it looks orange from a distance, I hope that you don't have hay fever, because that's windborne pollen that's really going to have an effect. So we have a bunch of things in the 45-mile-per-hour that apply to right now, like the burlap barriers that Steve and I make fun of. We're probably too mean, Steve, about this. This is an effective barrier. It's far enough away from those evergreens back there that it could stop some salt spray from reaching them, and it's not touching the evergreens, so the salty cloth won't be just taking water out of the plants through the salty cloth. But more important there, and I think they're not even realizing it, these grasses, this is switchgrass, the native panicum. Switchgrass is a screen, and if you leave it up in the winter as a screen in front of, say, evergreens, the salt is going to lodge on the grass. And when you cut that grass and move it out of there in the spring before the heavy rains start, you've taken all the salt out. The highway department in Pennsylvania and Ohio figured this out when they started having less dieback on some of their newly planted shrubs and things along the sides of the road, when they had ornamental grasses standing up in front of them during the wintertime. And Steve and I, of course, we're going to park and look and see what more we could see, and find things like those trees. Maybe it'll keep the salt away from them, but it's not going to help them survive. Those bare branches are coming out of the ground, so those trees are planted at least 6 inches too deep. It's not going to be good for them. But we got things like this, sneaky trees. This is the time of year when you notice, wait a minute, that's supposed to be an arborvitae hedge. What's that tree doing sneaking its way in there? Because you know that once it gets big, like the mother tree way back there, it's going to shade out that hedge and you won't have a hedge anymore. Another time I was driving along on my way back from working in a client's garden, and this tree had fallen over that day. And people say, oh my gosh, what knocked that tree over? I always ask, how could that tree still be standing? See how shallow the roots are? They're just in the sod. All that's peeled up is the sod. And there are some roots that I think they show in this next picture. Nope, I didn't put the next picture in. There are a couple of roots that snapped, but they were going out to the side. And you can see that just in a day, and this is a day I was gardening for someone, the water that had fallen as rain a couple of days before couldn't permeate the soil, was just sitting there. So this plant's been slushing around for a long time. And that's the kind of thing you can see when you drive around. Right now, this time of year is when you can stop and tell people, why don't you cut that hedge to get rid of all of that thick stuff at the top and then it would grow more leaves and be bushier down on the bottom. Because if you just keep cutting the top, that's what you're going to get. Take the blue line and cut there. And if you do that now, when it's easy to walk on frozen ground, you don't have to worry about your trampling your daylilies that are growing along the hedge or whatever's going on there. People don't notice now if you cut a lot of stuff out. It's just missing, and they won't notice until things start greening up. Later in the year, it's things like the Aurelia, Japanese angelica trees that bloom quite late in the summer, August, even sometimes beginning of September. And then the seed pods form afterwards. They're pretty little trees. Or this time of in the fall, all the other trees have lost their leaves, but the Japanese maple is still holding them. That's a problem. The tree got caught before it could lose its leaves itself, and that can be an issue with the plant drying out over the winter because it literally has holes where the leaves rattle off. They should have gotten plugged with plant chemical products as the leaf gradually fell off, but the leaf didn't gradually fall off. It died in place, and so they can't be making those plugs for the tree. So the tree can dry out, and if that happens to your Japanese maple, if it's sitting right now with leaves on it or had leaves in the fall, you're going to want to make sure you water that tree real regularly. Don't make it soggy, but make it wet. People will also say, I'm seeing the little orange berries on it. It's a magnolia. Magnolias are well, they don't always have a lot of fruit on them, but they can be quite pretty magnolia flowers. In this particular 45-mile-per-hour garden, we have links to what the seed pods on redbud, beech, catalpa, clematis look like. So you can click and look at other pictures of neat flowers and fruits.
Nancy is wondering, do we know of a strong, sharp hedge trimmer that could cut through that top shearing, or do we have to individually cut each branch shorter? You would definitely cut each branch shorter. Don't use a shear. Any shears we've ever used leave rough cuts. And if you leave rough cuts all along that blue line, like Janet said, that's going to be letting in so many problems.
And
Do each one individually. It takes time, but you get it done right.
And here's the real kick with pruning this thing. To prune below where my blue line is, to prune below all of that stuff is, I'm going to say 30 cuts with loppers here, as opposed to cutting 300 branches and getting them stuck in the teeth of a power hedge trimmer. You can take a little chainsaw and cut right down through there, and it's still going to rip some of the branches. But if you have to use a power tool, go ahead and use a power tool, but you're going to cut far fewer branches. They're just bigger branches, and you can do it every year, every few years.
Yep.
We have a pokeweed because people ask, what is this? There's this huge tree growing. It wasn't there 2 weeks ago. It wasn't there. But yeah, that's probably pokeweed. They can get to be 8 feet. And even the seedlings have a root that goes to China. The bigger guys have monstrous roots on them.
Wanda asked, what about Zaza? And that's about the same thing. It's
Yeah.
up to the individual what kind of power tool you want to use, but the cuts aren't going to be as clean as they are with hand tools,
Yeah.
generally speaking.
Our son-in-law looks for reasons to use a Sawzall. So does our son now. I mean, they're cool tools to use, and yes, they will work.
Yeah.
It's just a little saw, and it's going to be a cleaner cut than you would get from a hedge trimmer. But
Yeah.
we're not big power tool users. Maybe we should start doing that now, Steve.
Yeah, might help us.
We can't really review brands or what do you call them? The add-ons that you can put on, features on different things. We're just
Yeah, Donna uses a chainsaw and follows up with her pruners.
There you go. Good call. Because then you can
Yep.
see the ragged ones or the ones that.
Because not all of them will be ragged. There'll be some really nice cuts.
Thank you, Molly, for the ents. I told her.
I love tree ends.
Yeah. And I don't know that she found this one. I think she might have brought this from a Facebook post that somebody posted to her, but that's pretty cool. if you got a few days left, if you want to ponder and contribute to what will be your gardening legacy, because Steve and I are just putting it together. These webinars we bring you in the Free for All Fridays, this is almost live material. I mean, we don't have it on a shelf somewhere and pulling it off. The first year that we did our webinars with you, we did have materials from our school that we ran, and we had things we could build on. Now we're making them up new, and we're still working on it. So if you want to contribute to what you think your gardening legacy will be, what will endure because you were there and your garden was there, or maybe you've inherited it or discovered a legacy. If you have ideas, even if it's just a couple words, we've gotten some in chat and some in email already. That's fine. Also photos, or if you want to send photos, because you might, maybe your legacy is leaving a cool hedge that somebody else is going to prune in this shape forever and ever. Some people have a legacy that's building a house, a cottage. This is Barnsley House, Rosemary Verey's house in the Cotswolds in England. Or maybe you just leave a good ground cover that later on nobody knows what it is anymore because they don't recognize our native Pachysandra. They say, well, whatever it is, it turns a nice orange in the fall. And it's a nice, calm, tame ground cover. Had a discussion over the weekend while we were down in Youngstown with one of the other speakers. And we were talking about 9-bark. And we were talking about 9-bark at Free for All Friday last Friday, about how hard it is to prune it, to keep it small and still be able to get flowers and leaf color. So that's a 9-bark with the flowers were white. Now they're becoming pink seed pods. And some of them, the ones that seem to be most prized by people right now, have bronze or purple leaves on them. This one is Diablo. And they're all big plants. Now, the speaker that I was talking to likes to use 9-bark, he said, in place of boxwood. And I'm waiting to hear, we're going to have a discussion, he and I, on how the heck he prunes them to keep something that wants to be that big, 10, 12 feet across and 8 feet tall, and grows like a weed, how he keeps that cut like a boxwood. Because unless you're going to grow those boxwoods in their natural form, thanks Nancy and David for bringing this picture from the Denver Botanic Gardens. It's a perfect illustration of what we generally use boxwoods for, which is topiary, which are forms. I'm pretty sure I haven't seen 9-bark used in any of the hedge collections. Steve, do you remember seeing it in Minnesota or at Hamilton?
Yeah, there was a 9-bark at the hedge in, was it Minnesota or Hamilton? Somebody, I've seen one.
Okay, well, we need
And
to
I think it was the purple one too, but I'm not sure.
We've also been talking to Elizabeth about what she should put in place of 9-bark. And when we're going to replace a shrub, we're trying to replace the main features. So if you're growing 9-bark because you liked the June flowers and the July seed pods, then when you replace it, you want to pick something that blooms in June or July. We were talking about using the native spireas, the Spirea tomentosa and Spirea alba. Yeah. That bloom at about anywhere from 3 to 6 feet tall. One species is shorter, one is taller. And they bloom white or pink in late June, July in Michigan. And they'd be smaller, more controlled than the 9-bark and give you a bloom at about the same time. Because otherwise, when we replace things, if we don't have some of the same feature, like the feature of the boxwood is the fact that it has such tiny leaves that you can shear it and not notice that there's cut leaves all over the outside edge where you sheared it, whereas 9-bark has a big leaf and probably won't hold as tight a shape, but we'll wait and find that out from people. We want to talk to the people who actually do it.
Yeah. Sue Gruba mentioned she loves the Zawzaws, but don't assume that the pruning blades sold for them are all the same. Some cut way too rough. She takes her old blade with her every time she's buying new, so she gets that same bite that she likes to feel.
That's gold. Thank you, Sue. Thank you very much. Yeah, Sue has been, let me see. I'm trying to remember what you call your pruning talk, Sue. Clip it before it. Oh, shoot. Anyway, yeah, a master pruner we're talking about there. Our epimedium all went bronze this year. Leaves burned off with no snow on top of them. Ronnie Fair sent this from, I've forgotten what barrier island she was on along the Atlantic coast. And those trees can stay alive like that. You just keep growing their roots further down. Ann Hackett sent this. I enjoy looking at, especially along the roadside in Pennsylvania and upstate New York, looking at some of those plants growing in rock, growing on a boulder. See, flare roots head
Look at
down,
those roots.
following the place where the water was.
Yep.
Mary sent this one Saturday morning. We were talking about it's time to dig some holes and take some soil samples to send in for testing. And Mary sent this. She said, "You guys in Michigan might be doing that, but we people up here in Mankato, Minnesota, we're not ready yet." She said, "This is what it looks like out my window today." It's good to have people keeping us on our toes. That yes, we have people listening and contributing from, well, all over in the Midwest, about Pennsylvania, New York, and Massachusetts, and also a couple people who chime in from Oregon on a semi-regular basis, and South Carolina.
Gretchen she missed when we were talking about the Pachysandra. Is the native Pachysandra as invasive as the Japanese and does it grow well? It's not as invasive and it's a little more particular where it grows well than the Japanese. That it seems to survive better rougher conditions, but I'm not.
I have not grown it enough to know how many different places it'll grow, but in a regular garden, it grows well. It grows slowly, more slowly than the Asian Pachysandra, but it is a ground cover. It is going to try to spread,
Yep.
cover the ground. It's just it's a little lower profile, and I love the fact that we've got some fall color with it. Any other questions there, Steve?
Where to buy it? I thought I saw it at Telly's.
I have seen it here and there at garden centers. It's not something that's normally carried. And the last time that Steve and I got it, we ordered it, I think, from Gardens of, what's the one that's in Maine?
Oh,
Oh shoot, I've forgotten the name of them. But yeah, Google it online and look for it. If you see a particular nursery that's selling it and you're not sure about it, ask us, send us an email, and we'll tell you if it's one of the places we ordered from, because there are so many of them. I think Digging Dog Nursery had it.
yeah, they did.
Okay. Another thing that came up last week, we were talking about fruit on winterberry. And this weekend, we were talking with a couple of horticulturalists about the big fruit, the unnaturally sized fruit that we've been growing for. And when you get huge fruit, it's because you've genetically modified the plant, either in a laboratory or by crossing things and hybridizing until you got huge fruit. When you are hybridizing or altering something for huge fruit, you're probably altering other genes too, and you don't know what things are happening. We were just told, and I've been looking for some corroboration from other sources. I'm not yet ready to talk about that, but they said that if you get a winterberry, Michigan holly, that's the deciduous holly here, and it's one of the cultivars that has been bred to have more fruit and bigger fruit, that it's likely that the birds will not eat that fruit as readily because it's too big. It's bigger than some of those birds are used to putting in their mouths and gobbling down. So if you're a wildlife gardener, you might want to stay away from the nativars or the cultivars that have particular names. We had a neighbor that, he tried all kinds of things, hanging aluminum pie pans, CDs, owls in his bushes to try to keep the birds from coming and eating his holly berries. But when they are hungry and it's a natural holly berry, boy, they get plucked off of there in no time at all. Some things lose their berries, so they're eaten in the fall, because these berries on the cotoneaster will fall off by the time it gets good and cold. So the birds seem to know and go for those as they ripen first. The crab apples that hold small fruit, I've had a lot of people say that it's some kind of cherry. No, it's not a cherry, it's a crab apple with a little tiny fruit. And we've been breeding, we nursery people have been breeding more and more for small fruit, which is a little less messy than big apples falling off of your crab apple. Small fruit that's persistent, that holds on into the winter. And because we have so many of them giving us color in the winter, we have so many of them offering fruit for birds. And we probably have more robins and more bluebirds now and cedar waxwings, because as they come through in the spring, there's that much more fruit for them not being harvested. It's not like they've got to steal it behind a grain. It has just been through harvesting corn or whatever kind of grain. They're just sitting there with nobody using them at all. That's enough berries to support a whole cedar waxwing group. And most fruit will get eaten at one time or another, even the crab apples and even the rose hips, sorry, that have ice on them now. I've seen blue jays sitting and pecking apart a rose hip. They're high in vitamin C, so why not? And bayberries. The American cranberry bush viburnum fruits stay on through the winter because the birds don't eat them until they turn into raisins. It's their, what is it called? Starvation food. They're the last things, they're not their favorite things, but they'll go for them once they get that way in the springtime. And while I was looking up things about fruit, I remember that we were talking about the amelanchiers, the service berries, and which ones had good fruit on them. And that was a fun thing to look at, because the fruit is quite tasty. So if you look up, I was looking for Saskatoon jam. Saskatoon is serviceberry's name in Western Canada. And I found things like, because I wondered if I could contact some growers of serviceberry and ask them what type of serviceberry are you growing that tastes better than other types. I find things like this. This company partners with foragers. So where are those serviceberries coming from? They're coming from the wild stuff. And what's native in Western Canada is the Amelanchier alnifolia. The deep purple berry is considered a superfruit. I love that. And I like his name, Weeby Jammin. An Aboriginal privately owned Saskatchewan company. So here's somebody that's got legitimate claim on growing a native fruit. So I looked through these looking for, there we go. In native foods, it says Northline. They're growing Northline. Or this group is growing Regent and Standing Ovation, Amelanchier alnifolias. And then, of course, I'm always going to go first. You can see it's purple because I operated this link. I'm going to look first at the extension bulletins. And Penn State reports that alnifolia is the one that people are going to use. It's a little further down. The fruit of Amelanchier arborea, the downy serviceberry, the single-trunked, bigger one, isn't considered very tasty. But Saskatoon serviceberry alnifolia is, and here are some more names listed: Smoky, Tyson, Regent, Pembina. So if you're looking to grow serviceberry for taste, there's your lead, and that's how you can find it out. Go looking for the people who cultivate it, grow it as a crop, or collect it from the wild. I don't think.
We got about a minute left, if that. We're
Okay.
over, actually. Angeline, does anyone have a recommendation for an arborist to prune out some dead branches from an oak tree in Oakland County, or anyone to stay away from? I have almost any tree company that has an ISA, International Society of Arborists, certified one on staff is a company you can probably work with, and feel secure that they're treating your trees the best they can be treated.
And that they're working safely. The last thing in the world I want to have happen is to have somebody get hurt working in my trees. And tree work is the most dangerous occupation in the United States. Forget all that about going out to sea and fishing and that being the OSHA records show that people are hurt more in arboriculture, in work per capita than any place else. And most of those injuries are not falling out of the tree, it's from having things drop on you. So you
Yeah.
want people who wear hard hats, eye protection, are trained in climbing up and down and how to take a tree down.
When to climb, how to climb.
Yeah, so look for that ISA certification.
First question you ask any tree company, do you have an ISA certified arborist, and can I talk to him or her? And stay away from anybody that doesn't. If they don't, truly don't risk your tree or your property with some of these people, in my humble opinion.
Okay, so I didn't realize that we were out of time. Steve, thank you very much for keeping track. I could go on all night, obviously. Don't even know what we've missed, but we won't be here. I love this one. Thank you, Mary Ellen, so much.
That is great. Great shots.
And the woody woodpecker, pileated woodpecker in your garden. But we'll call it, that's it for this Free for All Friday. And because of the way the calendars run, we're going to be doing Garden Legacy as a webinar a week from tomorrow. And that means we will not be doing a Free for All Friday next Friday. We don't double them up like that. It would kill us. But if you've got anything about Garden Legacy, there's still time that you could send that to us. And everybody that's a subscriber, and if you're a non-subscriber but you contribute, we'll make sure that you can join us, send you an invitation. So March 8th.
Thank you all very much.
And March 8th is the next time we'll do Free for All Friday. So tell your friends, bring some people. Let's march into spring together with as much success as we can possibly have. Thank you.
All right. Thank you all. Ta-ta for now, and have a great week.